Welcome, my friends, to the Happy by Mistake pod, building an abundant mindset for life and business. If you're a small business owner, entrepreneur, practitioner, or perhaps an executive feeling tapped out in their career, then you've come to the right place. In this pod, I tackle common challenges and themes that come up in the coaching that I do. And for the most part, I do that by having free flowing dialogue with an expert on the topic. All right, let's dive into the latest episode. Today, we have the great pleasure of speaking with coach, author, HR consultant, and developer of the Be the CEO of Your Life program, Tania Chomyk. We're going to talk to Tania about the Be the CEO of Your Life program, the importance of knowing your values and having clarity in your goals while building a career or business or any other change that you're looking to achieve. And we'll also talk about thriving beyond grief and how we combat negative self talk. Welcome, Tania.
Thank you, Corey. I'm so happy to be here.
So happy to have you. So let's dive into the questions. So, you have a program called Be the CEO of Your Life. It's about helping people who are not satisfied with their life and or careers to find their passion and their motivation and really to reach higher and design their life. What inspired you to develop this program?
Thank you, Corey. So be the CEO of your career life program. I'd say there's two things that really inspired me. I guess one was my own personal transformation that I went through. When I stepped off the career ladder, I took a real deeper dive into this self-discovery to figure out what did I want the next chapter phase of my life to be like. And the funny thing, Corey, is that unbeknownst to me, or perhaps I've already knew this, throughout my career, throughout my transitions, every time I moved around, I mean, I stayed, most of my career in higher education, but I was able to navigate that and I was making decisions based on who I was. But I didn't realize, I never really put language to those things. I didn't put language to the things that I valued. I didn't put language to my aspirations, my goals, future, all these things, the impact I wanted to make. And I think when I went through this process, I realized that there was so much there. The tools, the resources that helped me continue the path that I'm on now. And so I decided to put all this together and to be able to help people have a decision-making framework for life, for all the decisions that they make, to really understand why they're making them and why they're not making them. So that was one part of it. And the second part is having experienced and working in human resources for most of my career, um, I see that a lot of people are struggling. I see that a lot of people are feeling lost. They're on autopilot. They're just doing, and they're not really being true to who they are. And I feel that this is a piece that's missing for them. We offer so much training and development for employees on how to do things, time management, conflict management, performance dialogue, all these things, but we don't give them the tools to really dig down deep into who they are and to bring out those skills and the talents and how can they maximize that in any phase, of their career. So it's kind of a twofold. It's a personal goal of mine to really bring this program out and to help individuals, and from a HR perspective as well, because I feel that this is something that really could benefit teams and organizations.
Well, it sounds wonderful, and I think most people would be interested in a framework to help them make decisions in their life.
Right.
So, I would add one thing is that you said that we don't teach them to figure out who they are and where they're going to shine. I would say in some cases they're actively discouraged, right? In some systems. So,
Right.
yeah, in some
Yes.
corporate systems. So, important realization. Now, that brings me to um, somebody's in that situation. Somebody is checked out. They feel like they don't have options. and they're just sort of going through the motions. Maybe they've tried. Maybe they've tried to, engage with leadership about a new project, a new role, whatever it is, and they felt for whatever reason that there was just no opportunity there. What advice would you give to somebody that recognizes they're in a rut, but the system that they're in is preventing them from really um, engaging on the level that you're talking about?
Right, right. And you're absolutely right, Corey. There's a lot of that that's happening, right? People will come into an organization because they value what the organization represents, and that aligns with who they are. So if you want to work in higher education, it's because it speaks to you. But what happens is that there's layers within the organization, right? There's leadership. It changes. And what happens is sometimes you feel you don't align anymore, perhaps with the leadership, or you are feeling a little bit lost. So you need to be able to take a step back and say to yourself, what can I do to bring out the best of myself in this current context? Is there something that I can do? Can I have, these conversations? The problem with a lot of people is that they don't have the confidence to have those conversations. And so this program, when you take a deep dive and really figure out who you are, and you say to yourself, this is what I value. These are my goals. These are my aspirations. These are my patterns. This is the environment of where I really excel. When you have clarity with those things, it makes it easier then to have those conversations. And it also makes it easier for you to say, I don't think I'm going to be able to get what I need in this structure. And so I'm going to have to make a conscious decision to move forward, because sometimes it's just difficult, to navigate, and you need to say to yourself, is this worth it?
Yeah, and that's where a lot of people stop, right?
Right.
Because they're afraid, they doubt themselves, they're working really hard, so it's hard to find the energy to start searching for something else. But the message that I think that I would give to those people is it's not going to get better, right? In that environment when you're feeling that way.
Right.
So starting to put some energy into where do I fit? What other options are out there? It might be the greatest decision that you ever make. So don't let that fear, don't let that doubt stop you. I'm sure you'd agree with that.
Absolutely,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. Once you know and you figure out these are the things that I'm good at, this is what I'm passionate about. If you see that you're not able to exercise that in that climate, then yes, it's up to you to say, I know I'm worthy. I know the value I can bring, and it's time for me to go elsewhere where I will be appreciated. So exactly, it's to take that leap. And this is why sometimes you need that support system to help you, because it's hard to journey career and life on your own. And actually, we're not meant to do it on our own. We're meant to do it with supporting people, right? So
Agreed 100%. Yep.
yeah, yeah.
So, getting back to the Be the CEO of Your Life program, can you give me an example of a client, not mentioning any names or anything that would give their identity away, the situation that he or she came in with, and what was the key to their transformation? I'm sure it's a complex thing, but what what was the real trigger or the real key that helped them evolve?
That's a really great question, Corey. And I'm going to give you an example of someone who just completed the program with me, or she was part of the first cohort. And she came into the program having worked for an organization for approximately 12 years, and was at a point where it was very, very toxic, the environment that she was in. And she valued the organization. She aligned with them, everything. But over time, leadership changed. And so it became very toxic. And what she got out of the program, I think the transformation for her, and this was a difficult thing for her to get through, was to really understand what she valued in life, what was important to her, how she wanted to live her life. That first chunk of the self-awareness piece, it takes people a while to get them, to really understand, because there's so many things that we do value in life, but when you can come up with your super values, these are the things that I want to live by every day, that was a revelation for her. And when she was going through the program, I can tell she was getting stronger and stronger, building that confidence, saying, you know what? I'm not going to put up with this anymore. I don't deserve this. I'm worthy of more. So before she went on vacation, she approached HR and she said she wanted to be packaged out. She was not going to come back from vacation and work there anymore. And lo and behold, she got exactly that. She went on vacation in peace. She came back. They had a discussion at HR and they came up with a mutual agreement, and she's living her best life now. She's actually gone in a different direction. She's doing a little bit of contract work. She feels so good. She was scared all along,
Of
but
course.
she got to that process and now she feels like she's come alive.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
alive again. And it's like, what a feeling. So, yeah, that for me
Fear.
was amazing.
And well, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. And, going back to the support, right? And the support that they receive within the program or coaching or a network of friends, whatever it might be. It's that fear piece, that unknown piece that people need to get over to start to really get somewhere. And, on that note, I'll say, in my experience, entrepreneurs, small business owners, they have a higher risk tolerance than the average person. So they're more willing generally to make those kinds of leaps and risks. And it pays off. It pays off for them. I'll also say, man, do we not do leadership very well in North America? I mean, there are beautiful exceptions to the rule, but the number of times that you have a functional team that gets destroyed by a leader that comes in and just brings in a toxicity or a style of leadership that doesn't mesh with the people there, it's amazing.
Right. And you know what it is, Corey? Often people get promoted for the wrong reasons,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you get someone who's very, very good at, let's say, leading workshops. They can develop workshops, they're great. And all of a sudden, they become responsible for the whole team or the whole unit. And it's like, is that really where they excel? And perhaps not. And so then you're putting them in a situation, we don't give them the tools necessarily to equip them with the skills that they need to lead. And this is what happens. So it happens so often. We promote for the wrong reasons. We take people who are so good at something and we put them in something else. But that's not the way to really embrace an employee's skills and talents and maximize, that within the organization. And it happens, like you said, often.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. You mentioned, you used the term super values when you were describing yourself and describing the case with the last person that you mentioned. So, first of all, what are they? What are super values?
So for me, I call them super values, excuse me. Those are these values that speak to the core, to my core being. They're the principles that I live by every single day. So if you think of it like a tree, for example, to me, the values are the roots of that tree, right? Everything around that tree are those resources. So the earth, your support system, and the roots are who you are. That can't be taken and that can't be compared to anybody. This is me. This is who I am. That trunk then, so what happens is you've got the roots. The trunk becomes, how do you show those values? How do you demonstrate them? What are your behaviors, right? So it's kind of those strengths of yours, those skills, that all comes out. And then I look at the branches of the tree, and those are the domains of your life. So career, community, family, whatever that is, those are the branches that come out. And then the leaves are those accolades, the things that you've accomplished, what came out of that. And then the leaves fall and then we start all over again, right? But everything starts from the roots. So for me, it took me a while to figure out what are my overarching values because there's so many things that I value.
What
So
are
my
they?
overarching values are freedom,
Hmm.
creativity, and relationships.
Hmm.
Now I'm giving you one words, but of course there's meaning behind each one and what that means for me. But I'll tell you, Corey, knowing what they are and living by them, articulating them, it's like the most liberating thing, because when you're living by those values, it's like, it's just wonderful. It's so empowering. So those are my three overarching, and yeah, and I live by them every day. And it explains also why I do certain things and why I don't do certain things. Because if freedom is my value, I can't stay constrained in an environment that doesn't allow me to be free to create. So it also explains a lot about why we're not doing things.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I think I've always sort of identified with that. I didn't refer to it as super values, but I get, I get the point. And I think freedom is one of mine as well. I would say authenticity. I would say, and this is pretty metaphorical here, but I would say that I see the world and people with mind and spirit, if that makes any sense.
Yes,
And I
I love
try
that.
to I try to do that. Yeah. I like that. I like you know what? It's very helpful to refer to it as super values or as the tree. Because we need metaphors, right? We need
Yes.
stories to make sense of our world and to grab onto something. So for instance, if you're in a situation where you have to make a tough decision in your life, in your career, with an employee, with a colleague, if you refer to your super value, it's going to guide you. I often talk about, I do guided visualizations where I try to get people
Mhm.
to a point where they're connected, they have an image of the best version of themselves. And to me, that's a 50,000 foot guide to behavior. And that's exactly what the super values do too.
Yes.
So I like that a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, uh, you talk a lot about clarity in your work with people who are seeking to find meaning, purpose, a new direction in their career and their life. Two-part question. What does clarity mean to you in this context? And what is the power of that clarity for people seeking to build a new path forward?
Right, right, yes. So clarity is really having a good sense of who you are, really understanding who you are as a person. It's almost like you're looking at it from outside in. Who's Tania Chomyk? How would I describe Tania Chomyk? What is Tanya? What is Tania Chomyk like? What does she do? What does she do? Right? So it's taking that step back and asking yourself all these things that are important to you. So again, bringing in the whole self-awareness piece. I talk about the 7 pillars of self-awareness. And so when I have clarity of who I am, the things that I value, what I'm passionate, my aspirations, my vision, all of that, it just makes it so much easier to navigate life. And you know what it is? It's about owning who you are. It's about being okay with who you are as well. So it's understanding who you are, but being okay with who you are and showing up, wholeheartedly as you, as that true person. Because when you're not, when you're changing, when we change that hat sometimes and we don't bring our true selves in certain situations, that's when we start feeling misaligned. We're not feeling good inside, and that's because we're not bringing out our true selves. So the important thing is to really understand who we are as individuals, our likes, our dislikes, our strengths, our weaknesses, all of that, and then showing up wholeheartedly as that person.
Well, that really resonates with me. I think it was the first episode of this podcast. Um, I think it was titled Manifestation and Why the Secret Isn't Working for You.
Mm,
And part of that is because it is not enough to look outward at what you want, the house, the car. It's about the way you show up along that path. And so you're flipping it on its head, which resonates with me, which is let's look inside first. Let's get really clear about who we are, how we want to show up in the world. And in the, it's not to say we don't identify a vision. We don't identify what we want to accomplish or milestones along the way, but that is not enough. It's how you're showing up, how you're living, how you're aligned, as you said,
Yes.
um, in the everyday, in the grind that leads towards that vision. And what is the joy? What is the happiness? What is the excitement that you're getting out of that journey?
That's
So that all resonates with me.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And also to be aware of when you're not enjoying life, when you're
Mm,
not enjoying the work, what's happening with you? Why is that, why is that happening? Why, if you look at your week this week and maybe last week, you were in a different state of mind, you need to ask yourself those questions. What was it about last week where I was feeling really, really good? And this week, I'm not feeling so great. What has changed since then? Because you're doing a compare and contrast with yourself only, not with anybody else. So it's always about looking again within. What was it? And I ask the questions with what, because what gets you to a place of solution versus the why, right? We ask a why question and sometimes it just keeps us stuck. We don't want to be stuck. We want to get out of that. So yeah, definitely a lot of inward work. And going back to the program, this is the thing. We don't take the time to do this work for
right.
ourselves, right?
Right.
We don't take the time because we're too busy doing everything else. Autopilot, got to do this, got to be here, got to. We don't take the time to sit and reflect and do the self work. And honestly, when you do this work, your future self is going to thank you because you'll have a clearer path and just able to navigate more confidently. That's what it is, with more confidence, you know?
Yeah, again, we need to start disagreeing on something because because I agree with you completely. No, I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
hey,
This isn't a
this was a
debate
perfect
show.
match, Corey.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. No, I agree with you, and it sort of brings me back to, when I was doing organizational psychology, and the most common thing that I would hear is I would say something like, what have you done to improve this situation or this process or whatever? And the response I would often get is, we're so busy putting out operational fires that we have no time to think strategically. And I would say, if you don't slow down and think strategically, you're dooming yourself to an endless cycle of operational fires. So my job was really to get them to slow down so that they could move faster and have bigger success. And that's, in a way, what we do in coaching, and certainly what you do in your program, is to get people to slow down and recognize this is important stuff here. Everything else flows from this, from those roots, right, that you
Exactly.
referred to. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes, I love that.
yeah. Okay.
Exactly. If we could only get leadership, it's forward-thinking organizations that will get this. I'd say it's smaller and medium-sized organizations because this is a different way of thinking, right? And bringing this kind of training, bringing this to your people is not something that comes easy. Like you said, they're all driven by the numbers, and again, depending on private or public sector here. But absolutely, this type of and I'm starting to see differences. I mean, sometimes it's not the whole program, but I'm getting pieces in there. So facilitating certain workshops on self-awareness, little pieces here and there. And I'll tell you the value when, employees at the end of the workshop will say, this was like a breath of fresh air. I haven't had a training like this. You've made me really think about myself. And that's what we don't do enough. So exactly.
And that's powerful. You know, I guess I'd say that the larger the organization, the more sort of groupthink often sets in, the more there's bureaucracy that prevents
Yes.
being nimble. But I'd also emphasize that when you say it's about the numbers, it is about the numbers. It is about the numbers for small business owners, for large business owners. But you got to be careful how you calculate numbers, right? How many wonderful people leave because of a toxic environment? People that would have brought numbers, right? How much better would things be going if you have a cohesive, engaged team, right? So, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Invest in your people, invest on the human side of your resources. We get too bogged down with process. That's the problem. So much, like you said earlier, bureaucracy, process, process, process. We're forgetting about the people, taking care of the people. Without your people, you're not going to be successful. So you need to nurture them, right?
And for the people that are saying, well, AI is just going to come in and do it all, watch episode 2 of my conversation with the neuroscientist Niccolo
Right,
Bernardi about why AI is not proceeding the way you think it is.
right.
Okay.
Mhm. Good.
Uh, People experience transformational change in their lives as they go through that. And by this, I mean change in the way they see themselves and the world around them. They sometimes find that their previous connections, family, friends, whatever, are not as satisfying as they used to be. Do you have any advice for someone navigating their relationships as they, let's call it grow and evolve or just change, and those around them are perhaps not?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I mean, I've personally experienced it, and I think a lot of people experience when they're transitioning into something new. And I always say that our career is kind of like life cycles, right? If we think of life cycles, we think there's a beginning, there's a peak, and then we kind of, go back down, we go back up because we as individuals are learning and growing, and everyone's going to learn and grow differently at a different pace. And if you're learning and growing and then you keep, moving forward, you're not as attached. So maybe it is a lot of us entrepreneurial who have a mindset that way. I don't get so attached to what was before because when I've gained a lot more knowledge and I'm excited and passionate about something, I can move forward. I can let that go because I've transitioned from that. I feel good about that because the learning that I gained brought me to where I am today. But not everyone is at our pace, and the people around us don't necessarily buy into everything that we're doing. In the end, I always say we have loving critics and we have unloving critics. But the folks that will, no matter what we do, it's not going to be good. They're always going to be critical. And then we've got the people that you can talk to, the people that can give you constructive feedback, the people that are going to support you. So we need to always be around those people. And, it's like, that snake skin. It kind of like it could, should I say, diminish.
Shed.
Exactly, shed. Thank you. I was missing the word shed. And that's how it is in life. We can outgrow certain relationships because of our own personal growth, and we have to be okay with that. So it is about recognizing, are these people supporting me the way I need to be supported? And I always say we're the average of the 5 people that we're closest to. You start feeling that you're not as inspired anymore, you're not as engaged anymore, you've got to rethink the people that you're associated with or the people that you're going to, because that needs to change. And how to do that is you don't have to sever the relationship. You don't have to totally, disengage, but be aware of how much time you're spending with them. Be aware of what you're sharing. Because if you're not getting what you need from that person, then that's when I would limit the conversation. I would limit the interaction. If these are, family members or so, you can't totally disengage, but you need to be able to consciously say to yourself, okay, these are the people that I know I can go to for this. These are the people. So I call that, having your own personal board of directors
Mhm.
and knowing who's on it, and to say that it's okay, it evolves, it changes, just like in an organization. People come, people go, and you'll change those people, right? So same like in your board. You don't have to be so tied to it because you yourself are changing and growing. So it makes sense that that would evolve as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're cultivating those that give you the energy and the support, and maybe you're setting boundaries on the ones that you're not. Like, for instance, somebody that might be listening as well. I have family members that drag me down.
Yes.
Are we saying get rid of your family members? No, but we are saying you can set boundaries with them. You can communicate them. This is my journey. It might fail, it might succeed, but I'll tell you what, I just want to focus on the positive right now. Can you handle that? You know? So,
I love that.
yeah, a lot of entrepreneurs face this because there's this risk period, right? They've invested time and money and everything else, and
Yeah.
it hasn't paid off yet. And the people around them are bringing doubt and dragging them down and things like that. And you can't have that, right? I mean, it's hard enough to build a business or start a new project or something within a corporate environment. And that in of itself is tough, right? But if you have
Right.
people dragging you down, you really have to set those boundaries. Because as I think you and I have already said, change is social, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay. Now on to a heavier topic, and I'm very sensitive to uh, how heavy a topic this is. So I'm not going to get into the specifics or bring those up. But, people can be inspired by you, people can learn from you. So you have experienced a tremendous tragedy in your life, and you know grief very, very well. If you could distill down to one piece of advice that you might offer to someone trying to navigate their way through this level of, intense grief, what would it be? And let me add, it doesn't have to be distilled down to one piece of advice. If you want to say a few things, that's fine too. Um, but just because I want to take the opportunity to learn from somebody who has experienced it and come out the other end thriving.
Thank you, Corey. So yes, about 25, 26 years ago, I lost a son, a baby boy, at the tender age of 6 months, who passed away in his crib, in his sleep. And of course, that experience, just this um, shook my life. And interestingly, I was this past weekend actually, I was invited to speak at a show called the Unedited Woman Show, and to share stories. And women were sharing stories, whether it was through song, through verse, through dance. And so I shared my story, and it was called The $1 Million Family, and how I overcame that grief. And you see, even talking about it now, 25, 26 years later, there's still this
Of
this
course.
sensitivity, of course, right? So grief never goes away. The dark clouds that surround grief, they never go away, but there is light, there is love, always waiting to be found. And I think to be kind to yourself when you're going through the process, because you are going to go through those stages of grief. I speak about the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, those 5 stages of grief. They're real. I went through the numbness, the bargaining, the depression, all of that. That comes with the loss for sure. And um, and you get triggered some points. There's little reminders that happen. But what starts happening is that I've learned to accept that loss. I've learned to accept that in life, bad things happen to good people. And life happens on its own terms, not on ours. But good things happen too. And sometimes they happen at the same time. So while, my daughter was my rock, she, her smiles and her beautiful stories of my son singing to her at night comforted my broken heart and opened my eyes to what was in front of me, that Danilo will always be with us. He'll always be part of our family. And I learned to accept that. And, you know, miracles happen. He was a miracle. And then, you know, I experienced purest joy again, one that I'll say only a mother could ever really know is, I welcomed another son. So another miracle, another child, another son. And so um, I have that angel with me. He's with me all the time. He's guiding me. He gives me the strength. And through his his short life, I'm able to create something meaning and purposeful by sharing the story. So you've opened that door for me to share this today. I've shared it, on stage, and now I'm actually writing a book, and it's going to be called Echoes of Hope, Thriving Through the Depths of Loss. And that loss, that's the most tremendous one. But there were other losses that I experienced in life. Nothing will ever compare to that. But the marriage, the dissolution of my marriage, career, there was major loss in my career, all these things. And he gave me that strength. He was that catalyst that showed me that if I can get through that, I can get through anything. And I want to make his life, um, his short life, meaning and purposeful by just carrying on his name and his legacy. So the rock, that heavy rock of grief, it does get lighter. It does get lighter because you know what? You get stronger. You get stronger every single day. And when you get stronger, it just becomes less heavy.
It's such a powerful story. I was choking back tears as I saw you choking back tears, and then my heart lifted as your smile grew. And I do want to point out a really important ingredient to all this, to your ability to thrive, is that you did embrace service, right? To take your grief, your tragedy, and look outwards and think, how can I share what I've learned? How can I give hope to others experiencing it? You looked outward. And I think that is a really, really crucial part of overcoming grief. The people that don't do that can sometimes end up where they're shut off and shut down, and so life never carries on, right? But you turned outward, you brought beauty to others, and first of all, that's an inspiration. And second of all, I think it's a really important point. Does that resonate with you?
Oh, it absolutely does resonate. And you know what? It's funny when you say that because initially I had to figure out how I was going to get past it. So I did I did protect my space. I did build a shield. I, when I wrote a research paper on life after the loss of my child, that was my way. That was my therapy. I remember at the time when I was writing this paper, my husband was traveling in Paris. And so I would put the children to sleep. And for 1 week, Corey, on the dining room table, I had all these books on grief. I thought I was going to write a research paper on work-life balance. Look how that theme came right to where we are today, be the CEO of your career. I got there, but I had to write this paper on grief. I went to the library and I just kept going towards books on grief. And something inside of me said, you need to write about this. And so I wrote this. So I found ways to heal within. I wrote about it. And even when I returned back to work, I didn't go to an environment that they already knew me because half the people at the university were at the funeral. I couldn't face them. So I found a safe space for me to go to, and it was a different department. So slowly I got myself the strength, then I was able to deal with it with the public because that was the hardest thing for me, except therapy. That was easy for me to go and speak to a therapist and just cry most of the time. And the support system that I had, the few folks that would come over that would try to uplift me. But in the face of people, it was really difficult to talk about it because as a parent, you think you failed. So
Thank you so much for bringing that context in. Yes, because when I'm talking about being outward focused, I'm not saying that that happens at the beginning or the mid, or like there's a time and a place for it. And I think it's really honest and really vulnerable and really important that you said, I needed to create a shell for a while and I needed to find some adaptive strategies to help me navigate all this and continue to live as I was in the deepest depths of this grief. So thank you. Thank you for that. Um, I'm going to shake that off because there's a lot of emotion in there. Beautiful emotion, but a lot of heaviness. Thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable because I think it's so important. I want to
And
move
Tori,
on. Yes, go ahead.
sorry, just before we move on, I just want you to know that, Danilo, my son's with us because his picture is right there. If you don't know if you see right
Oh,
behind me, he's
oh,
always with me, my little angel. So sorry, I felt like I'd have to share that because
you're
he's
gonna
here
you're
all the
gonna
time.
you're gonna get me choked up again.
Oh,
um,
oh,
that's very, very beautiful. Okay, so I want to talk to you about self compassion and where self compassion shows up within the Be the CEO of Your Life program. I've often offered to my clients the perspective that our society has kind of tricked us into believing self compassion is a kind of weakness and that you need to get tougher on yourself. When in fact, I would argue self compassion is a huge strength. Being vulnerable is a huge strength. And beating yourself up is not only a weakness, it's a selfish act because how you treat yourself ripples out to everybody around you, including your children, your colleagues, your employees. Um, so I want to know where self compassion sort of plays out in this program, how it shows up, how you approach it.
well, thank you. But yes, self-compassion plays, I find, a huge role in this program because you have to see yourself objectively. And this is where I say the difference is you're not, if you're looking at yourself from outside in, then you're looking at yourself objectively. It's like it's somebody else. We think about the self-talk and they always say affirmations, I am this, I'm. But if we put the third person with your name, seems like it's you, but it's not really you. But you can see that a little differently. You're kinder to yourself. It's almost like you see yourself maybe as somebody else, and then you are kinder to yourself. So this self-awareness piece is huge in really taking an objective look at how you see yourself and at the same time how others see you with those same strengths and those same weaknesses and those same values. So it plays a huge role, and it's not really about becoming tougher. It's becoming more self-aware. It's becoming more knowledgeable. That's the power of understanding who you are. So say, I think the quote is wisdom is the no Aristotle, what's the quote that he says? Knowledge is, oh, it just escapes me right now, but it's
No
knowing
worries.
thyself. It's
Right.
really knowing thyself so well. And so I think it plays a huge role in this program. When we dig deep into who we are, the language that we choose really dictates a lot of what we believe. So it goes back to how do we talk to ourselves as well, right? Sometimes it is about thinking ourselves as that third person, if that's what it takes, so that we could change that language, we could change that tone. And you're right, the way we show up is how others are going to feed off that. So if we don't show ourselves self-compassion, if we're not kind to ourselves, then how can we possibly bring that best self forward with others? So it's really plays a big role.
Yeah, and I think what you said about looking in and seeing yourself as that other person is really key because we tend to be more forgiving of somebody that we care about and their flaws than we are to ourselves. And you
Yes.
gotta, Dr. Neff, for instance, has self compassion practices that can be very profound, and you've got to be able to bring that same um, non-judgmental, compassionate sort of eye or spirit to yourself that you give to your friends, to your child, um, to family members. So I agree. Um, Having that perspective and putting into the perspective of the sort of the larger human experience. So if I make a mistake, a big mistake at work, or I invest in something as a business owner and it doesn't work out, costs me money. Um, if there, typically what you'll find is you had pretty good reasons for doing what you did, right? And
Mhm.
so put it in context. Is it understandable that you might have made this mistake given the circumstances? Did you do it based on what seemed like pretty good evidence at the time? Have a million other people experience the same kind of mistake, right? And start to put it in that perspective. So I think that's what you're talking about is seeing yourself with fresh eyes rather than sort of beating
Yes.
yourself up.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
that beating of yourself up doesn't serve you. It's not going to get you out of
No.
the situation.
No.
And I always say what happened in the past is the past. How can you move forward? And I like when you bring up the point of, when you're asking yourself these questions, also ask, how is this going to impact me? And I use the 5-5-5 rule or the 7-7-7 rule or 10-10, whatever. But 5 minutes from now, how is this going to affect me? 5 months from now, is this decision going to have a bearing on my life? Is this going to matter? And 5 years from now, how much is that going to matter? Right? So if we put a little bit of context in terms of the the level of anxiety that we have towards what we just said or what we just did or so forth, put into context in terms of timing, and then look and say, you know what, 5 minutes, okay, now this is bothering me, but 5 months from now, is this going to have an effect on my life? No, it won't. So I'm going to let this go. Right? So it's trying to find strategies too to let things go, because that's the problem. We just keep a lot of stuff in our brains and our minds. We keep the noise in, and that's what happens. And so it's another way to, how can you let that go and just keep moving forward?
Right. Right. And this is where mindfulness comes in as well, because if you're constantly projecting into the future with anxiety or fear, or you're recriminating for past mistakes in the past, you're not living, right? You're not in the moment. Your
Right.
creativity goes down, your fearlessness goes down. The opportunities you see, the people that come into your life, it's all different when you're in the moment as opposed to living in fear or recrimination. So makes sense.
Yeah.
um I think you alluded to this and I want to touch on it because I think it's important. In the work that I do, I often help clients become aware of their own self-limiting beliefs, to understand how that's impacting them or their business or their career or their life, and to begin to change that so they reach a point where their thought patterns are supporting them instead of sabotaging them.
Mm.
And I heard you refer to language, so I want to touch in on that. Um, is language one of the ways that um, that you identify, that you use as a tool or a strategy to deal with these self-destructive thought patterns?
Oh, yes. Yes, thank you, Corey. Language is definitely. So positive affirmations is something that I use on a regular basis. And for me, it's more about, it's believing those things, right? So the more we speak of them, the more we can believe them. I use the affirmations. I couple that even with a power pose, which I feel that adds a lot more, just confidence. So whether you're having these thoughts because of a situation, whether you're having thoughts because of a conversation that you're about to have, something that's uncomfortable for you, even anxious about going for an interview. So many people, has these self-limiting beliefs. So when you start using affirmations coupled with a power pose, and I literally stand in front of the mirror, 2 minutes, you stand, like Superwoman or Wonder Woman, and you say these affirmations, you start convincing yourself that yes, you are confident, you are worthy, you are, all these things. I'm bright, I'm smart, I'm articulate, whatever words to help you, because it is all about you. It's how you can get past and move forward. And something I also do is, when I have these self-limiting beliefs, and I think, all of us have them, no matter how much you've built a muscle to try to stop them. They come, right? It's a natural thing. So I'll picture like a stop sign. When I see myself going through these, I'll just like close my eyes and I'll do two things. I'll picture a stop sign and I'll say, okay, this is not serving me. And I'll change what I'm doing. So if I'm sitting, I'll get up and I'll create some movement so I could, change the thought process. Or I'll close my eyes and I'll go to my happy place. So my vision boards all have a happy place for me. And I can close my eyes for 2 moments, go to that vision, go to that happy place, and start feeling the emotions I feel when I'm in that happy place. So let's say, for instance, it's, a walk by the ocean. So I think of the sound of the ocean. I think of the hot sun on my skin. So the sensation that I feel. I think of, this, the walking and, your feet in the sand. So how does that feel? So I think of all the things that I feel when I'm in my happy place, and it changes my aura completely. It's almost like now I've done like a whole 360 degrees. So it is language, it's affirmations, it's visualizing your happy place, your stop sign, whatever that is to help you stop using those, beliefs or those self-sabotaging beliefs, and release them. So that's kind of the way.
Okay, thank you for that. So the power pose makes sense because it's somatic, it's embodied, it's the connection. We have this artificial metaphor that the mind and body are separate. They're not. You can't have a thought or an emotion without a body. So, um, you know, it makes total sense. They even talk about, the old adage from your grandmother: "Put a smile on your face, and the world will smile with you." When you
Yeah.
smile, the crunching of those muscles creates endorphins that make you feel better, right? When you do your visualization, you're connecting to an emotion. You're generating that emotion and that connection. Now, what I will say though, is you've done a lot of work on this, right? And so you've built that muscle. You can access that fairly easily. The caveat that I'll mention for beginners is positive affirmations typically do not work very well for most people when they are in the grip of the fear. I wrote a blog post on this called "Walking Around Mindfulness," and it's
Right.
one of the caveats in there. You can find that on the Happy by Mistake pod, castleroadcoaching.com. The idea being that if you do a positive affirmation and you don't believe it, you're just getting into a shame spiral, right? So, doing an exercise like walking around mindfulness, just simple breathing, even
Mhm.
that can interrupt that thought, get you to the present instead of the future or the past, and then doing a positive affirmation, that can be very, very helpful. But don't get into the mistake of doing the positive affirmations and trying to force it and just like because what you'll do is not really believe it, and then you'll end up feeling even worse. So a little caveat there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an that's an excellent point. Exactly. If you're not believing it, yeah, you've got to, seeing is believing, but saying is believing as well. So if you start using different language to yourself, you may start believing it. But exactly, if you're really in that fear space, then maybe that's not the approach you want to take right away. It's more the physical. So get up and leave that space. I think that's really, and also kind of think about that pattern of when you get these thoughts. How often do they come? What triggers them? And try to, like, I think too, sometimes when you think of a thought about what somebody said, we don't have evidence of that, right? It's because we're thinking about it. So you ask yourself that question: what evidence do I have that substantiates this thought as being a fact? And if I don't have evidence, then why am I wasting my time thinking about it, right? So it just gets you to kind of like, I don't know that this thought is true. And if I have no proof, then this is a waste of thought for me. So again, you got to build that muscle, but it can help you stop thinking if you ask yourself this question: do I know for sure that this thought is 100% true?
Yeah, because we catastrophize, right?
Right.
We think the worst possible scenario. I didn't get that deal because somebody said something bad about me. And again, where's the
Exactly.
evidence? Is this serving me? Are
Yeah.
you're never going to know the answer, right? So why bother putting energy towards it? So yeah, that
I
all makes
know.
sense.
Oh my goodness. Easier said than
Okay.
done, right? But
Yeah, yeah. But,
it's a work
you
in
know,
progress. Yeah.
yeah, it's a work in progress, and any kind of change like this is built on practice, whether it be the positive affirmations that you're talking about or the language or other things. It's like learning a sport, any kind of mindset change, repetition, repetition, repetition. And you've got to the point where, for instance, that visualization can snap you out of negativity. Um, but that didn't happen overnight, right? That came from
Exactly.
practice, right? Yeah. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
let's end this podcast on a playful note. I'll offer you a word or phrase, and you share with me the first things that come to your mind. Let's go on intuition here. Let's not overthink this. You willing
Okay.
to play?
I'm willing to play.
Okay. Clarity,
Oh, liberating.
values,
What I live by every single day.
your favorite dessert,
Oh, I'm going to say strawberry shortcake.
your favorite movie,
Oh, romantic. I'm going to say the notebook.
the notebook. Okay. Um, entrepreneurs and small business owners, often one and the same.
Keep at it. Just keep going. You got this. Keep shining, keep going. You're going to make it.
Forest,
Oh, for me, that's an endless prospect of wonder.
the phrase, I can't do this.
Oh, yes, I can.
Okay. Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge and your experience and your unique perspective and your vulnerability. Where can people find you if they want to hire you as a coach or learn more about the Be the CEO of Your Life program? What's the quickest way to connect?
Thank you, Corey. So the quickest way to connect, I mean, I think I made it easy for everyone. If you know my name, you'll find me. So Tania Chomyk, you can find me on LinkedIn. There's only one of us. If you type Tania Chomyk on Google, you'll be able to see my website. So you can find me there. And yeah, LinkedIn, my website by my name. I think that's the best way. I mean, I do some work at La Passerelle and McGill. You can always, find me there as well. But if you're looking just to connect with me, then I'd say LinkedIn and my website.
And
Just
I'll
remember my
include
name.
and I'll include your website link in the episode notes so it's easy for people to find you.
Perfect.
For my listeners, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you as we dive into these discussions together. If you're watching on YouTube, please consider liking and subscribing if you've not already. If you're listening only, please give a rating on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for listening. Between now and the next pod, I wish you and I wish Tania a happy, engaged, and successful week. Bye for now.
Thank you so much.